be one of the toughest teachers because it gives you the test first and the lesson afterwards. I think losing a loved one is one of the hardest tests to learn from, and one we are never really prepared for, regardless of our age. There are no words to explain the roller coaster of feelings that emerge during this test. And although the book Grieving for Dummies does exist, it doesn't really help because the grieving process is a very personal one and differs for each of us. Good grief encourages us to dig deep inside ourselves to find the answers to our individual challenges. My family has never been normal, but then again, is there such thing as a normal family? My parents immigrated to this country from Argentina a couple months after my first birthday. The plan was for my father to get an MBA from Dartmouth, work off the student loans with 2 to 3 years of work, and then move back to our native homeland. During the first year in New Hampshire, my brother was born. Soon enough, my dad graduated and got a job in New Jersey. Everything was going according to plan, until my dad was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's follicular lymphoma. Several years of community prayers and 2 bone marrow transplants later, my dad was in remission. As I grew up, I began to struggle with my identity, a battle I, like many teens, fight every day. My dad was my pillar, that one person that I could always count on. He was my role model. You see, he hated his job, he hated doing chores, but he never focused on those things. He was always happy. He knew what he wanted in life, and there was not a single day he compromised on his priorities. As a family, we always came first. He was patient and kind and always found a way to make us forget we were ever mad at him. He would sit down to explain math, and like any good engineer, it would take hours for him to get around to solving the simple problem. When I was in 4th grade, I was learning about electric circuits and science, and I didn't understand any of it. I made the mistake of mentioning it to my dad. He disappeared into the basement, and for a few minutes, I thought I was safe. That's when he showed up with a battery, cables, a light bulb, and a switch. That night, I stayed up until midnight, building models and learning resistance and voltage. Let me just remind you that as a 9-year-old, I only needed to know how to differentiate an open circuit from a closed circuit. Needless to say, I aced that test. On March 4th, 2015, I returned home from school with my brother, and we noticed my dad's car was parked in the driveway. We walked in only to find my dad sitting on the couch playing Candy Crush on the iPad. He explained how he wasn't feeling well and so he came home early from work. That night, we went about our routines. I was in my room doing homework, but occasionally I would go in and check on my dad, who was getting visibly worse. He was blazing red and he said his head hurt. I made sure he was drinking water and would occasionally replace the wet towel on his forehead. That night, I was woken up at 3 in the morning by my mom, who uttered the words I was sure I would never have to hear. We stayed up talking about him and about what was going to happen now that he was gone. The next 2 months, I shut out my head completely. I'm not really sure what happened. But then we joined Good Grief. My first reaction when my mom told me she signed us up was, "Ew, no, Mom." My mom said we should give it a try, and if we didn't like it, we wouldn't have to return. I suppose you can guess what happened next. We attended the night of support, and I loved it. For the first time since my father died, I felt indescribably comfortable. I met people with similar stories and problems. The first thing the teens in my group told me was, "We are all one person." They continued, "We all now have a deep connection." As crazy as it seemed at the time, I found it to be nothing other than the truth. We understand each other in a way no one else can. Although our stories differ, the loss of a loved one scarred us the same way. In Good Grief, I found support that my friends in school can't offer because they live a completely different reality. Good Grief provides the space to remember those we have lost and share our stories and memories in a natural way, without being judged or pitied. Good grief is not a sad place. There are definitely tears, but sometimes we feel the need to be goofy and we can't stop laughing about the silliest things. Here we feel safe to be who we really are and express what we really feel. At Good Grief, we feel normal. As I said in the video, good grief is indescribable. While most people at the funeral said to me, "I know how you feel," only at Good Grief did I find real meaning behind those words.